So when it comes to moving into a new home, it's pretty common knowledge that one of the first things that you need and want to do is cleanse the home. And of course, I'm talking about with your Lysol and all that good stuff, but spiritually as well, getting your floor to water, your prayers, or whatever routine you need to do to make sure that house is cleansed, because you do not know who was living there before you, who they were, what hell they were causing, what they had going on. And you don't want that energy to continue living in that space, because maybe they're gone physically, but their energy is still there spiritually. So you want to make sure you're cleansing the home, making it brand new just for you, your family, or whoever. It's a good reset for the home. And usually when we do this, we're just expecting, okay, the person prior, we need to get rid of their energy, any unwanted energy, any negative energy that may be in here. But I'm sure we are not expecting that the home we are moving into would be possessed by more than just a former tenant, but more than 200 demons. Will your floor wash work for that? Will your sage work for that? Will your prayers work? Or would you need to call in reinforcement to get rid of these demons that's now haunting you and your children? Today we are going to talk about the demon house in Gary, Indiana. So first, I would like to thank Mystical Beauty Doll Show for leaving this comment and suggesting for me to cover this video. It makes my life and research a lot easier when y'all leave topics for me to cover down below. So thank you for this, especially for this video, because this is quite different than the other haunted places I have covered, because there are a lot of witnesses, a lot of statements, and I believe this is the most current one we've done. This starts in 2011, specifically in November 2011, when Latoya, her mother Rose, and her 3 children ages 7, 9, and 12 moved into a rental home at 3860 Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. Now, I'm sure this is an exciting experience, moving into a new home, especially for a mom with your children, and you're able to bring in your mother as well. But this excitement, this joy, this proud moment soon started to fade away, because just a month into living there, they began to notice some odd occurrences, we'll say. Let's start off with the first one. Big black flies suddenly started to swarm their screened-in porch in the middle of December, despite the fact that it's freezing outside. And we usually see those type of flies during more warmer temperatures. I call them barbecue flies, because usually I just see them like at barbecues. It's just like flying around people's food. But that's usually in the middle of spring or summer. But Latoya and her mom Rose both noticed how weird this was. They said this is not normal. We tried killing them and killing them and killing them, but they kept coming back. And then another occurrence after midnight one night, Rose and Latoya both said they occasionally heard the steady clump of footsteps climbing the basement stairs, as if someone was walking up and down the stairs, creeping into the kitchen. But there was no one there when they checked. And even when they locked the door connecting the basement and the kitchen, they still continued to hear these heavy footsteps. Now, of course, this could be paranoia, like, okay, maybe there's a dead possum underneath the porch that caused the flies suddenly in the middle of winter, or maybe it's a new home, so you're just feeling a little creeped out with, it's a new place, it's a new area, so you think you're hearing footsteps, but maybe it's not there. But things kept happening, and things started to get even more eerie. One night around 2 a.m., and normally the family would be asleep around this time, but they were mourning the death of a loved one, so I'm sure they were staying up late, reflecting over memories and all that stuff with a group of friends. But Latoya, the mother who was in her mother's room, Rose, startled everyone by screaming, "Mama! Mama!" You know when you get real scared, you just shout for your mama. Rose said she ran into the room where her 12-year-old granddaughter and a friend were staying. Latoya and Rose said that the 12-year-old was levitating above the bed, unconscious, right in front of them, like just levitating above the bed. Latoya and several others surrounded the girl. They began to pray, and eventually the girl descended onto the bed, woke up not remembering anything that happened. But of course, the guests in the home remembered all the commotion and what they just saw, so they left and they never came back. And I would do the same. Let me be over someone's house and someone just starts levitating their uncle. Bye. Witch, no witch. I don't care. I'm not helping, but I gotta go. I gotta get in a spiritual bath now because I don't know what y'all just had up in there. That's scary. And this is one of the occurrences where it's recent and multiple people are seeing it. So once that happened, the family knew that they needed to seek help, but the churches did not take them seriously, and they just suggested for them to cleanse the home with some bleach and ammonia. Y'all do not do that. do not mix bleach and ammonia. And they also suggested for them to use oil to draw crosses on every door and window. And this is typical. We usually see people of certain faiths do the olive oil over the doors and the windows. And following the church's suggestion, Latoya said she poured olive oil on her and her 3 children's hands and feet, then smeared oil in the shape of a cross on their forehead. So along with reaching out to the church, they were really scared. They also reached out to some clairvoyants as well. 2 of them, to be exact, who said that the family home was occupied by more than 200 demons. Their explanation did make sense to Rose and Latoya because they said it meshed with their Christian faith. The clairvoyants also suggested that they should move, but it wasn't realistic for them. They couldn't afford to move. And I'm sure a lot of people who just move into a home, you can't up and just move a couple months later. But they did take the advice of the clairvoyants to make an altar. So Latoya covered an end table with a white sheet, then placed a white candle and statue of Mary, Joseph, and Jesus on it. Continuing the clairvoyants' advice, they burned sage, sulfur throughout the house, starting upstairs and working their way down. The smoke was so thick they said that they could barely breathe. But Latoya was still able to draw a cross with the smoke. And when I heard that the smoke was so thick, of course that shows there's some type of other presence there. But I just wonder, and this is probably me just being nitpicky, I wonder did they have like a window open or a door open? Just because for saging advice in general, you want to make sure you have some type of door open when you're removing energy. Don't have all your windows and doors closed and you're like, I'm trying to remove negative energy. The negative energy has nowhere to go. You want to make sure that it exits with the smoke through a window or a door or both. So the person who did the ritual with Latoya, their responsibility was to read Psalms 91 aloud as they moved throughout the house. And Psalms 91 says the following: "You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday." So I must mention that they also did this ritual dressed head to toe in all white, which is a typical color that is used during any type of spell work or rituals, unless you're using a certain color to channel certain energies or a deity. But for this type of ritual that they were doing, white is a typical color to wear. But things started to get better, it seemed. For the next 3 days, nothing happened. But then after that 3rd day, things got worse. Worse than the bugs, the heavy footsteps, the levitating baby, the children. Remember I told you children are innocent, so they are more vulnerable to these type of energies. But the children began speaking in low voices, whispering statements like, "It's time to die and I will kill you." When they spoke, their eyes would bulge and their mouths would curl into an unnatural grin. At the same time, Latoya started to feel lightheaded, warm, like she wasn't in control of her body. And she started to experience this several times. You will hear this several times throughout the story. As far as the youngest boy, who was 7 at the time, he sat in the closet talking to a boy that no one else could see. And they knew this wasn't the typical imaginary friend, but it was a different energy that was there. The boy that he was talking to was describing what it felt like to die. Rose, the grandmother, said the 7-year-old once flew out of the bathroom as if he's been thrown, and a headboard once smacked into Latoya's daughter, causing a wound that needed stitches. But no one knew who threw this headboard, who had the strength to throw a headboard. The 12-year-old would later tell mental health professionals that she sometimes felt as if she was being choked and held down so she couldn't speak or move. She said she heard a voice, and the voice said to her that she would never see her family again and wouldn't live for another 20 minutes. Some nights were so bad that the family had to sleep in a hotel. So with all of this going on, Latoya knew she had to get some extra help for this situation. So her first instinct was to go to their family doctor, and that's exactly what she did on April 19, 2012. Latoya took her children to their doctor, Dr. Jeffrey, to examine. Dr. Jeffrey took note of all of the children's delusional behavior, including their low voices and disturbing statements. Dr. Jeffrey stated, 20 years and I've never heard anything like this in my life. He said that he would not speak in more detail unless Latoya had psychiatric clearance for the waiver of confidentiality that she had signed. In his medical notes about the visit, Dr. Jeffrey wrote, "Delusions of ghosts in home and hallucinations. History of ghosts at home and delusion." Now, during this visit, medical staff said the youngest boy was lifted and thrown into a wall with no one touching him. The boys abruptly passed out. The grandmother cradled one while Latoya cradled the other. And with this, someone from the doctor's office called 911. Dr. Jeffrey said 7 or 8 police officers and multiple ambulances showed up. They couldn't figure out exactly what was going on, Dr. Jeffrey said. Police and emergency personnel took the boys to the Methodist Hospital's campus in Gary, Indiana. Latoya said hospital professionals laughed at her desire to anoint her sons in olive oil. Latoya said, "I couldn't talk to them, so I just talked to God." the older boy, who was 9 at the time, acted rationally after he was awakened, but the youngest screamed and thrashed, and the grandmother, Rose, said it took 5 men to hold him down. And mind you, the youngest son is 7 and had to be held down by 5 men. The effect on the children led them to miss a lot of school. Soon, doctors and police officers started to get involved. Someone called the Department of Children's Services and asked the agency to investigate Latoya for possible child abuse or neglect. The callers speculated that Latoya might have been experiencing some mental issues. The person also believed that the children were performing for Latoya and she was encouraging their behavior. Like, all right, when you go in here, make sure you just say that you've seen a ghost. Make sure you act all scared. They didn't believe it was real because it just seemed like too much from a movie that was going on. Because they're like, okay, so you have bugs at your door. Your baby was levitating. You hear footsteps. Now these children are cursing doctors. They up here being thrown around, passing out, and have to be held down by 5 different men. It just seemed like too much back to back was going on. But now we're about to find out about another witness who may make their story more believable to the public. DCS family case manager Valerie Washington was asked to handle the initial investigation. She gave the following account to police officers in her intake form. Hospital personnel examined Latoya and her children and found them to be healthy and free of marks or bruises. A hospital psychiatrist evaluated Latoya and determined she was of sound mind. Valerie, the caseworker in the situation, interviewed the family in the hospital. While she spoke with Latoya's 7-year-old boy, he started growling at her with his teeth showing. His eyes rolled to the back of his head. The boy locked his hands around his older brother's throat and refused to let go until the adults had to pry his hands open. And this is going on during the interview. And later that evening, Valerie and registered nurse Willie Lee Walker, I love that name, Willie Lee Walker, brought the 2 boys into a small exam room for an interview. Rose, the grandmother, she was there to join them as well, just in case anything else occurred. The 7-year-old started to stare into his brother's eyes and began to growl again, saying it's time to die. While the youngest boy spoke, the older brother started head-butting Rose in the stomach, started head-butting his grandmother in the stomach. Rose grabbed her grandson's hands and started praying. According to Valerie and Willie, the nurse, the 9-year-old had a weird grin and walked backwards up a wall to the ceiling and then flipped over the grandmother, landing on his feet while still holding on to Rose, his grandmother's hand. Willie stated he walked up the wall, flipped over her, and stood there. There's no way that could have been done. Later, police asked Valerie, the DCF investigator at the time, whether the boy had to run up the wall as though he was performing an acrobatic trick. You know how kids can be like, they'll be like, watch this, and they'll just do a cartwheel or a spin and think it's cool. But Valerie was like, no. This boy glided backwards off the floor onto the wall and the ceiling. It wasn't a trick. He wasn't breakdancing. And when it happened, Valerie and Willie ran up out that room because he was literally defying gravity right in front of them. So all of the rumors that they were hearing, that just solidified everything that the family was saying. And of course, even with all of these witnesses, the doctor still did not believe them and asked the boy to walk up the wall again. The nurse, Willie, said he told the doctor he doubted the boy could repeat it because he wasn't himself in the first place when he did it. Even the boy said he didn't remember what happened and couldn't do it. Willie also said he previously believed in demons and spirits, thought the boy's behavior had some demonic spirit to it, but was the result of mental illness. But he was later convinced that it was something else. A police report quoted Washington saying she believed there could be an evil influence affecting the family. This is coming from the DCF worker, that she believed there was some type of evil influence over the family. Now, Latoya spent the night at the hospital with her 7-year-old son, while Rose took Latoya's daughter and her other son to a relative's home in Gary. The next day was Latoya's youngest son's 8th birthday. DCF officials asked Rose to bring the older children back to the hospital, presumably to talk more about what happened. We just want to bring them in, have everybody in person, just so we could discuss further what's going on. But first, the family celebrated the boy's birthday by singing, eating cake, all of the birthday things, and then Valerie ruined the whole mood and said that the children wouldn't be going back home with them. DCS took the emergency step of taking custody of the children without a court order. According to the DCS forum, all of the children were experiencing spiritual and emotional distress. Latoya stated, "We already been through so much and fought so hard for our lives. It was obvious we were a team and we were beating it, whatever it was, wherever we're fighting, we made it through together as a team, and they separated us. Now, this part was heartbreaking. One, you have a mother who provided housing for her children and her own mother. Obviously, DCF didn't find any type of abuse, malnutrition when it comes to the children, so she takes care of them. But she was up against something she never experienced before and could not control. And in the midst of trying to help and protect them, the kids get taken away. Granted, at least the children are removed from the situation and don't have direct contact with the demons, but I'm sure they much rather stick together in that situation and maybe relocate as a group. Maybe there should have been some protection for the mother as well. I'm sure it don't work like that. And of course, in my head, the kids have to be separated, but it's like, damn. But moving on, there was a reverend by the name of Reverend Michael Magino. He was leading Bible study in his living room the morning of April 20th, 2012, when he received a phone call from a hospital chaplain. Reverend Magino had been a priest for more than 10 years, but never received a request like this one. The hospital chaplain asked him to perform an exorcism on Latoya's 9-year-old son. Magino agreed to interview the family first, but the first step was ruling out natural causes for what Latoya and her family said they were experiencing. He visited the alleged haunted home on April 22nd, 2012. For the first 2 hours, Latoya and Rose told him everything that was going on, every experience, every encounter, weird sighting, misplacements of different objects, and then Rose interrupted the interview to point out a flickering bathroom light. But the flickering stopped each time Magino walked over to investigate, which he attributed that to a demonic presence. Then the interview was soon interrupted again when Rose pointed out the blinds in the kitchen were swinging even though there was no air current. And along with that, Magino said he also saw wet footsteps throughout the living room. Latoya again complained about having a headache, and Magino also said when he placed a crucifix against her head, she started to convulse. After a 4-hour interview, Magino said he was convinced the family was being tormented by demons. He said he also believed there were ghosts in the house as well. Magino blessed the house before he left, praying, reading from the Bible, sprinkling some holy water in each room. He told Latoya and Rose to leave because it wasn't safe. So they temporarily moved in with the relative, but just less than a week later, the two women were back in the home when the DCS family case manager had to check the conditions of the home. Valerie was a little scared to go back, so she asked a Lake County police officer to come with her. 2 other officers, one from Gary and one from Hammond Police Departments, asked to join them out of professional curiosity. So they just wanted to see what all the hype was about. They were being nosy because everyone just had split views on the situation. Some thought it was real and others thought it was a hoax. Latoya, however, knew it was real and refused to go inside, but Rose, the grandmother, agreed to accompany the group. Latoya kids were still in DCS custody during this part of the investigation. So before we get into the findings of the home, let's describe the house a little bit. So the main floor had 3 bedrooms, a living room, 1 bathroom, hardwood floors, and a small open style kitchen. A door in the kitchen led to the basement with concrete floors. Directly under the stairs was a dirt floor. The concrete around it was jagged as though it had been broken. And remember that altar from earlier that Latoya made? Well, it was still in place, along with rings of salt she had poured against the basement walls to try to ward off the demons. Rose, the grandmother, told officers that demons seemed to come from beneath the stairs. Austin, the Gary police captain, was one of those officers. He said he believed in ghosts and the supernatural, but said he didn't believe in demons per se. But after visiting the Carolina Street house, he changed his mind. So what exactly happened? So people are visibly seeing that something is off here. This home and several officers were experiencing different weird encounters. Going back to Austin, what he experienced, he took photos of the house. In one photo of the basement stairs, there was a cloudy white image in the upper right hand corner. When an officer enlarged the photo, that cloud appeared to resemble a face. The enlargement also revealed a second green image that police say looked like a female. Austin said photos he snapped with his iPhone also seemed to have strange silhouettes in them. Later, Austin said the garage in his home refused to open even though the power was on everywhere else. And something else, the driver's seat in his personal 2005 Infiniti also started moving backwards and forwards on its own. He said he had the car checked at the dealership and the mechanic told him the motor on the driver's seat was broken, which the mechanic said could have led to a horrible accident. Austin started to believe Toya's claims of paranormal activity, but the mental health professionals, however, that were evaluating Latoya and her children, they remained skeptical. In April 2012, DCS petitioned Lake Juvenile Court for temporary wardship of the 3 children. and that request was granted. DCS found that Latoya neglected her children's education by not having them in school regularly. Latoya told them that there were times she could not send them to school because the spirits would make them sick or they would be up all night without sleep. DCF temporarily placed her daughter and older son at St. Joseph's Carmelite Home in East Chicago. Latoya's youngest son was sent to Christian Haven in Wheatfield for a psychiatric evaluation. Clinical psychologist Stacy Wright, who evaluated Latoya's youngest son, said the boy tended to act possessed when he was challenged, redirected, or asked questions he didn't want to answer. In her evaluation, Wright wrote that he seemed coherent and logical except when he talked about demons. It was then that the 8-year-old stories became bizarre, fragmented, and illogical. Wright also said his stories changed each time he told them. He also changed the subject, quizzing Wright on math problems and asking her about outer space. Can you die if you go to outer space? How do you get to space? Do you have to wear a helmet and suit? Wright believed the 8-year-old did not suffer from a true psychotic disorder. This appears to be an unfortunate and sad case of a child who has been induced into a delusional system perpetrated by his mother and potentially reinforced. Clinical psychologist Joel Swartz, who evaluated Latoya's daughter and older son, came to a similar conclusion. There also appears to be a need to assess the extent to which Latoya's daughter may have been unduly influenced by her mother's concerns that the family was exposed to paranormal experiences. Latoya's daughter told Swartz that she saw shadowy figures in the Carolina Street home. She also said that 2 times she went into trances. Latoya's older son also told Swartz that doors would just slam and stuff would start moving around. Latoya also was examined several times by psychologists who said she was guarded, but did not seem to be experiencing symptoms of psychosis or thought disorder. One psychologist recommended Latoya be assessed to determine whether her religion may be masking an underlying delusional issue or perpetrating disturbances. So DCS decided to set a few goals for the family. One of them stipulated that the children not discuss demons and being possessed and take responsibility for their action. They also needed to participate in therapy to address past behavior. While DCS officials credited Latoya for sharing a close bond with her children, the agency also said she needed to use alternative forms of discipline, not directly related to religion and demon possession. According to DCS case plan, appropriate discipline included encouragement, rules, and withholding privileges. She could work on those goals during supervised visits with the children. So they're thinking, okay, she must be a crazy Christian woman and she must think that her kids are so good that anytime they do something bad, it must be demon. So the children are young and gullible. So they're just absorbing the fact that I'm not bad, I'm just possessed by demons. So that's what DCS is thinking. They're like, okay, so let's just get rid of all this religious and demonic type of accusations and let's just try different forms of discipline. Basically saying your kids are bad. Stop blaming it on demons. That's the only way that they could make sense of the situation. But Latoya knew that wasn't what was going on. And they also told Latoya, like, if you can't afford to move, you need to find a job where you can move. And while Latoya worked on meeting those objectives, police and DCF officials continued to investigate strange happenings in the house. Rose, Latoya, and the officer Austin and 2 other police officers from the initial visit went back to visit the Carolina Street home on May 10, 2012. The police officers visited after work hours. They were joined by Magino, 2 Lake County officers with a police dog, DCS family case manager, Samantha. And Samantha had came because Valerie didn't want to go back into the home. So now from Valerie to Samantha. A county officer took his police dog around the home, but the dog didn't show any interest in any particular area. According to Lake County police records, everyone else headed into the basement, but Samantha ended up touching some strange liquid she saw dripping in the basement. Why did she touch it? I don't know. It said it felt slippery yet sticky between her fingers. Magino told officers that he wanted to check the dirt underneath the stairs for a pentagram or personal objects that may have been cursed, any type of leftover spell work that may have been going on. He said a pentagram might indicate a demonic presence and possible portal to hell. Or if someone had died in the house and he was buried under the stairs, it could explain the paranormal activity. So a police officer dug a hole beneath the stairs, unearthing a pink press-on fingernail, white pair of panties, and a political shirt pin, a lid for a small cooking pan, socks with the bottoms cut off below the ankles, a heavy metal object that looked like a weight for a drapery cord, and that's it. Finding nothing else, the officer replaced the dirt and raked over it. Magino blessed some salt, which he said is a barrier to evil, and spread it under the stairs and throughout the basement. Samantha said she was later standing in the living room with the rest of the group she came with when her left pinky finger started to tingle and whiten. She complained it felt like it was broken. Less than 10 minutes later, Samantha said she felt as if she was having a panic attack. She couldn't breathe, so she walked outside to get some fresh air and to wait for the group. When the priest started questioning Latoya inside the house, she complained again of a headache and shoulder pain, and she then joined Samantha outside. So for the officer, Austin, as soon as the investigation was over, he left. He refused to stay in that house past night. And mind you, this is an officer that has investigated murders, been shot at, investigated robberies, took down criminals, and he did not want to stay in that house when the sun went down. The other officers continued to walk through the home. On the main floor, they noticed an oil-like substance dripping from the blinds in the bedroom, but couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So, of course, they're thinking like, okay, so she must have put something up here so it could look all creepy. They decided to use some paper towels to clean it off, and they sealed the room for 25 minutes and stood by to make sure no one could walk in and try to set something else up so it could look like, oh my gosh, where's this oil coming from? Meanwhile, is someone doing it? But when they went back into the guarded room, the oil had reappeared, dripping in the same pattern. Magino told the police that the liquid was a manifestation of paranormal or a demonic presence once again. He wrote in a report detailing his findings and asked Bishop Dale permission to perform an exorcism on Latoya, which the bishop hasn't done in over 21 years. Dale initially denied Magino's request to do a church-sanctioned exorcism. The bishop told Magino to contact other priests who have performed exorcism. Magino said he needed other priests to give him the ritual for a minor exorcism, which does not require the church approval. The priest he consulted told him to look it up on the internet. They was like, oh, you want to do an exorcism? Okay, just Google it. He said he did an intense blessing on the haunted home to expel bad spirits. The same day Magino performed a minor exorcism on Latoya, I guess he did Google it. The ritual consisted of prayers, statements, and appeals to cast out demons. 2 police officers and Samantha, the DCF family case manager, attended the ritual as well. Samantha said she left believing that something was going on. Although she wouldn't go as far as saying it was demonic, she said she got chills during the nearly 2-hour ritual. We felt like someone was in the room with you, someone breathing down your neck. Samantha said she had a string of medical problems after visiting the home. A week later, she visited the home for the last time. Samantha said she got a 3rd-degree burn from a motorcycle. Within 30 days, she also broke 3 ribs jet skiing, broke her hand when she hit a table, then broke her ankle after running in flip-flops. I had friends who wouldn't talk to me because they believed that something had attached itself to me. And when her friends were accusing Samantha of a demon being attached to her, she said, well, I'm kind of already evil, so I doubt a demon would attach itself to something already evil. I'm sure they'll have more fun with something a little bit more innocent. She was making a joke out of it. So after the minor ritual that Magino did, he told Latoya to look up the names of demons that were tormenting her. Each demon has a name and personality. A name has power, and he planned to use those names to fight the demons during the exorcism. Latoya says she and a friend looked up the demons' names online by searching for demons that represented the problems the family had been having. So they probably said demons making children levitate, which demons possess children to kill one another. And when they were looking this up, the computer kept shutting down. She said she felt sick, lightheaded again, but she said they found the names of it. One of the names was Beelzebub. She said that she also found names of demons that torture and hurt kids, which she felt explained what happened in the Carolina Street home. Latoya also said other high-ranking demons also were assigned to her, including lieutenants and sergeants. After the minor ritual, Magino said Bishop Dale gave him permission to exorcise Latoya. The ritual is the same as the minor exorcism, but more powerful because it has the backing of the Catholic Church. Magino ultimately performed 3 major exorcisms on Latoya, 2 in English and the last one in Latin. During each one, Magino said he praised God and condemned the devil. He pressed a crucifix against Latoya's head as he spoke, "I cast you out, unclean spirit, along with every satanic power of the enemy, and all your failed companions in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ." Magino said his voice continued to get louder and louder and more forceful until the demon weakened. He said he could tell by how strong the demon was by how Latoya convulsed. 2 police officers who had kept in touch with Magino since the home investigation stood nearby in case Latoya needed to be restrained. Latoya said she prayed with Magino until it became too painful. She said she felt as if something was inside her trying to hold on and inflict pain at the same time. She said it was different from a natural pain, but felt as intense as giving birth. "I was hurting all over from the inside out." She remembered, "I'm trying to do my best and be strong. Eventually, Magino said Latoya fell asleep. She said that was the demon's way of lessening the ritual's effect. So in between the second and the third exorcism, Magino said he went on a retreat. A woman who assisted with some of the exorcisms that Magino performed for Latoya, she set up a backup plan just in case Latoya had problems while Magino was gone. The woman wrote a long demon name, Magino said he can't remember which one it was, on a piece of paper and tucked it in the envelope. And then she surrounded it with blessed salt. If Latoya had problems, the woman would burn the envelope. By this time, Latoya and her mother had moved to Indianapolis, but they drove back and forth for the exorcisms and court hearings as her children were still in DCS care. Magino said he blessed the family's new home to prevent more problems, but Latoya called while Magino was on his retreat and complained of having bad dreams, so the woman burned the envelope where she placed the demon name inside, and she saved the ashes so she could burn it in a church bonfire. After that, Latoya said her nightmares ended, and in the final exorcism at the end of June 2012, Magino said he prayed and he berated the demons in Latin rather than English. Police officers did not attend this one, so Magino said his brother stood guard. Magino said that Latoya convulsed while he condemned the demons, but did not convulse during prayer. When she fell asleep, he said words of thanksgiving. It would be the last time Latoya saw Magino. She and her mother drove back to Indianapolis, where they say they now live without fear. Now, as far as Latoya's old home on Carolina Street became an object of local curiosity, so much that the owner, the landlord, Charles Reed, called the Gary Police Department to ask officers to stop driving by the house because it was scaring the new tenant. Yes, someone else moved into this home after them. But the landlord said there were no problems in the home before or after Latoya and her family lived there. Even though you guys will know later in the documentary, the person who later purchased this house interviewed a family that lived there before Latoya, and they were having paranormal experiences as well. So the owner, who's been the landlord for 33 years, he said, "I thought I heard it all. This was a new one to me. My belief system has a hard time jumping over that bridge." But when the Catholic Church involvement came into play, it made him believe the situation more and become less skeptical. Latoya regained custody of her 3 children in November 2012, about 6 months after they'd been removed, so she was without her children for 6 months. DCS continued to check in on the children to make sure they were going to school, and then the case was eventually closed once they figured out everything was okay. The children said that they felt safe after leaving the house in Carolina and were even happier to be with her mom. The children said they felt safe after they left the house on Carolina Street and that they left their demonic voices and complaints behind them. Latoya said it was not the psychologist who resolved her problems, it was God. When you hear something like this, she said, don't assume it's not real because I lived it. I know it's real. So after hearing a story like this, I'm sure you guys would want to stay far away from this home, especially with so many testimonies that were going on, so many witnesses, because usually when we hear about haunted houses, it's usually just like 1, 2, maybe 5 people in their own individual experiences. I have never seen a case where people are in a room and they're experiencing the demonic possession right in front of them, because sometimes we think of ghosts or different energies or demonic energies. They try to corner you by yourself to do something, so when you tell someone else, they won't believe you. This one was performing stunts and shows and wanted an audience because so many people were experiencing different things. So if you were to live in the same city as this house, I'm sure you would want to avoid driving by it. You don't want nothing to do with it. But in 2014, there was a man named Zach who purchased the house for $35,000 and demolished it in January 2016 after filming a documentary in it titled Demon House that was released on March 16, 2018. And you can watch this documentary on Apple TV, YouTube, Amazon Prime Video, not sponsored, but it is a good documentary. And in this documentary, you get to see why he ended up demolishing the home. You get statements from older tenants, what happened to them while they were in the home, updates on Rose and Latoya, who didn't want nothing to do with Zach. They said, you purchased that home, you've been inside that home, you will not enter into our home, you will not ask us any questions, because they feared that something would jump back on them. Like the demon would be like, oh, this is a familiar energy, let me hop on in this house. Because they were living at peace now, they want nothing to do with that home. So they barely got any interviews from them directly. And even when one of the brothers decided to do an interview, they disowned that brother and would not let him back in the house. They wanted nothing to do with that house. And you get to see what was happening on camera with Zach and his crew members, like how the brothers were attacking each other. The crew members were attacking each other, being possessed, leaving with health issues. Y'all, it is a good documentary. So make sure y'all watch it so you can get a continued perspective on on what's going on with this house. But thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Let me know what you guys think about the demon house. Where do you think these demons came from? Why do you think they decided to attack this family but not other ones? Why were some living peacefully? And even in that documentary, there were homeless people who were living in the home while it was empty. And they said they barely experienced anything. Only one person saw some weird occurrences. So he was explaining what was going on. But you guys let me know what you think about the demon house down below. How do you cleanse your homes when you're moving into something? What would you do? Should there be a clause like if the house is haunted, we should be able to break this contract so I can move? Let me know what you guys think down below. But like I always say, as above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe of the soul. Until next time, you guys, I'm Shay.